So today I thought, so last time I covered most of the mechanics of making offerings. So I thought today I would kind of talk a little bit about, I kind of found this one few verses from Rinpoche very inspiring. So I thought we'd do a meditation on that. And then some things about, like mantras and meditations to do while we're making offerings. So I went through the mechanics last time, but I didn't go over the kind of how to think with our minds about offerings as we're making them physically, right? So that's kind of what will be today. So maybe we should let's just do our refuge prayer. I go for refuge until enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my virtuous actions of giving and so on, may I become a Buddha to benefit all living beings. I go for refuge until enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my virtuous actions of giving and so on, may I become a Buddha to benefit all living beings. I go for refuge until enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my virtuous actions of giving and so on, may I become a Buddha to benefit all living beings. So I'll just read the lines slowly, and we can kind of just contemplate on them. So this is advice Rinpoche gave to a student in 2011, and he sent these verses as kind of inspiration to the person to make for offerings. So yes, it's mainly about devotion. So he writes, while there is the guru who is like a wish-granting jewel, an unimaginable wish-fulfilling tree, and the ever undeceiving, rare, sublime ones who effortlessly fulfill all wishes, still to be dissatisfied and spend your body and wealth on what is non-virtuous and without meaning is so very foolish. Dear friends, once you have understood that wealth is like dew on the tip of a blade of grass, and that your friend's body and life are like a bubble, then you must engage in virtues such as making offerings to the rare sublime ones, while looking at them as the guru, and extract the essence from your essenceless body and wealth. Due to this merit, may I and all others be able to make offerings to the Guru and the three jewels, since they are our crown ornament. By keeping my prayers and commitments, and by means of listening, reflection, and contemplation, with Guru devotion and supreme bodhicitta, may my life become fortunate, something meaningful and worthy of rejoicing. And in this way, may I fulfill all the wishes of sentient beings. Just as flies gather around dirty things due to seeing samsara as pleasure, so far I have accomplished only meaningless suffering, lacking any freedom to practice Dharma. Now, with my body, speech, and mind, I will engage in great meaningful actions for the welfare of others. May the Guru please bless me to be able to do this. So when we're making offerings, we have to remember what Rinpoche is saying is that we have to remember that we're doing it not for us, but really so that we can make our life truly meaningful and be able to achieve the ultimate goal of benefiting others in the vastest way possible. And when we make offerings, we have to remember who we are making the offerings to. So we're making the offerings to the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha, all the Buddhas in the 10 directions. But they are in essence inseparable from our Guru. Who is kinder than all the Buddhas put together. Who is here to guide us. Who is here going through, who is living in samsara for us. Who has gone through great hardship so that they can perfect their wisdom, their skill, their compassion, and all the perfections, so that they can be a role model for us. And then when we're making the offerings, we're making it to also the ultimate guru, which is the resultant Buddha that we will become. So it's not necessarily the guru outside, but the perfect pure wisdom that is in our hearts. So that it can flower and become, its greatest, and become a beautiful flower that can, support all the honeybees in the world. So we're also making offerings to our resultant self, because we will become, hopefully very soon, like our guru, and we will become inseparable with him. Yeah.
You just floored me, okay?
I'm sorry.
I'm reading, you just blew me away because I'm reading The Heart of the Path, and I'm on that section where he talks about your guru being the absolute Dharmakaya.
Oh, yeah.
And most of what you were talking about, I just read today, except not in those verses. So,
Yeah. Hi, Shayla. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you both. Sorry I'm late.
It's all right. Yeah. So yeah, it's I think it's important that when we make offerings that it doesn't become rote. It's easy. It's easy, just like any practice, really. It's easy for it to become just kind of mechanical. And I try to make an effort. Sometimes I notice that if I sit down to do my practice in front of the altar, I just kind of sit down and just kind of start doing, my practice. I don't even look at the altar very much. I just don't even look at the Buddhas, my gurus who are on there, like as if, I mean, it's a great privilege to have come, come into contact with them, or, in the case of the Manjushri and so forth and so on, not necessarily, physical, not necessarily like directly, but through the gurus. It's a great what an amazing fortune, like how fortunate we are, to have the Dharma in our lives. And then, we start doing our practice or doing whatever we're doing or start doing our practice and meditation and in front of the altar. And we don't, it's not uncommon at all. I've had other teachers talk about this, to really make an effort to to really, because those pictures on the altar, Rinpoche says is they are living, they're not just physical pictures, we have to think of them as being there in front of us, alive, which they are. We just don't have the karma to be able to interact with them in that way. But we have the pictures with which we do have the karma to interact. So that's kind of how, we just have to console ourselves with that, I guess, until we do reach the, our Dharmakaya potential. But, so when we make offerings, it's good to remember why we're making offerings, to whom we're making offerings. And, and really we have to evoke that sense of gratitude. It really is, if you think about, I always think about, Rinpoche, you can read about it. Rinpoche, in his retreats, talks about his experiences, right, when he left Tibet, and was in whatever that used to be a prison camp during the British days. And he talks about, and that's where they were, and he talks about the incredible hardship that they went through, and
Yes.
and
So many of them died of TB.
so many of them died of tuberculosis, of malaria, of dysentery. Some of the monks, didn't have, maybe I don't know. I don't know the detail. Maybe they didn't have sponsors and so forth and so on. So they went to work with the, what do you call it? The road crew, like what do you call them? Not something gang, the
Chain gang.
chain gang. Yes. Except they weren't in chains. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's like they were, and breaking rocks by hand, so, but, and then there are these people, these beings like Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe and, Geshe Sopa and, so many others who, they studied day and night. And, Rinpoche talks about he always says, well, I was really lazy. I really didn't do anything. But then there was this guy who was in my, whatever, in my, not the room, they didn't have rooms, but he could hear the guy in the bed next to him or whatever. And at like late at night, at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, he was reciting his, he was memorizing the texts and recite, and I mean, it just really inspires you, and then the horrible bathroom conditions and stuff that they had, they didn't even know, not, like they had just left Tibet, and and they were even though they were in the Indian, I think they were in the hill station, but still it got hot, it's like Florida, I mean, it got hot, and and they didn't know not to, that you can't just leave meat out for days, I mean, because in Tibet, you're just, it's cold and it's no big deal. And so many died of dysentery, and food poisoning and all. I mean, it's just incredible, the stories, and yet they continued, and they didn't lose their faith. And, I mean, I certainly would have lost my faith, they didn't lose, they lost their country, they were based, it's just incredible. I just find it really incredible. The teachers we have now who have spent so much effort to, to guide us, in a way, how can one not make offerings? I mean, it's like, it's one of those things, it's yeah. So, and they're continuously striving to encourage us, to to help us, to help encourage us when we're down. And yeah, it's really, really special, that we have access not just to the teachings, but to the teachers. So yeah, anyway. So last time, so I was telling Lewis before Shayla joined, that today is going to be relatively short, but in any case, it's because I've covered most of the mechanics of how to make offerings. And remember, we talked about it in the context of the 6 preliminary practices, right? Because it's not in isolation, right? So that's why it's important to know, the context. And if you remember, cleaning the meditation room and preparing the altar, right? Arranging the altar. And we talked about how to arrange the altar. Arranging the altar, like, we talked about the kind of the hierarchy of how one places the pictures or the statues and the stupa and the texts and so forth and so on. And then the second one is arranging the faultless offerings and what faultless means, right? And how to make arrange the offerings. And then the next one is sit on a comfortable seat and the Vairocana posture, right? The Vairocana posture, it's just the 7-point posture that they talk about. And then taking refuge and bodhicitta, right? So that's a third practice, preliminary practice. Fourth one is invoking, depending on what guru yoga or practice one is doing, invoking that merit field for that deity and or for that practice. And then the fifth preliminary practice is offering the 7-limb, so it has 7 parts, 7-limb practice and the mandala offering, right? I'm not going to go over these, but I'm just mentioning them because they're in every practice anyway. So the 7 limbs are prostrations, presenting the offerings. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and that's in that step. Confessing, right? Confessing our previous negative virtues and asking for purification. Rejoicing in our virtues and our teachers' virtues and on all the other beings and the Buddhas and so forth and so on. Requesting the guru to continue to stay and teach, right? Supplication to not enter nirvana, that is, not pass away from this life, right? To stay with us for as long as for forever. That's the the request. And then dedication, and then the mandala offering, right? So that's the 7-limb practice that is central to almost at least every Buddhist practice that I've come across. So that's the 5th preliminary practice. And the last one, the 6th one, is an attitude of supplication to ask for blessings. And that's where, one goes into, thinks about guru devotion, and so forth and so on. And then depending on the practice you're doing, the deity descends down your central channel, and, that you become inseparable with the deity and so forth and so on. So that's that step. So that's the kind of the 6 preliminary practices one kind of does before you do your main practice, right? So the main practice is whatever, if you're meditating on compassion or meditating on the Lam Rim or meditating, doing retreat for it, this is usually in the context of a retreat, right? Or not retreat, but a where you are spending your whole day and like four sessions a day and so forth and so on, right? Like a monastic or a serious lay person. So so you do the 6 preliminary practices, and then you You withdraw the merit field to yourself, right? For the blessings and so forth and so on. And then you do your main practice, right? And then you finally, of course, finish with the dedication, right? So that's kind of the, how to set up a meditation practice. That's the traditional way, right? Of course, we may not have the luxury of the time that all of the 6 preliminary practices take. So you might have to shorten it, right? And you'll have to decide which bits to shorten, make longer, and which bits to make shorter. But, certainly the 7-limb practice, if you know what it means, right? If you do and this is outside of the realm, not realm, but outside of the scope of what I can talk about in this, on this topic of offerings. But if you understand what the 7-limb practice, and you really, kind of think about it and meditate on them and study them, then you can kind of if you just do the 7, there's just short verse, short in like the Lama Chopa Guru Puja, for example, which is just, short, dozen lines or something like that. And you can just do those lines, and that is the 7-limb practice, because with each line as you recite it, you know what it means, right? You kind of, it evokes the quality of mind that you want in you when you recite it, because you know what it means, right? So you don't have to spend an hour on the 7-limb practice. You can just do it in 5 minutes, or maybe even less. So the 6 preliminary practices, shouldn't scare you, right? It can be short, but it needs, when you do it, it should be meaningful, right? It's not like you're just reciting the words and so forth and so on. So it's important to kind of really have the feeling of devotion and the rejoicing and and confessing, so forth and so on, with a heartfelt attitude, right? Okay. So last time we talked about kind of how to make the offerings, right? Physically, right? And today I'll talk a little bit about the mental attitude, as we're doing the mechanical things, right? And so so this is, oh, by the way, let me put this in the chat box for those of you who came in a little bit later. Okay, so this is a small booklet that FPMT has produced from Lama, with advice from Rinpoche. So, and it's, most of the things that I'm talking about are from here. So this will be a good reference for you and a good guide for you when you do need to, it's a good reference basically. And if you want to know how, oh damn it, what happened to my, I'm sorry. Somehow there's some kind of malfunction where half the.
You want me to put it in there?
If you are able to, yes, that would be wonderful.
We'll see if I can do that. Yeah.
Because my chat, oh, maybe here it is. Okay, I think I might have it. Alter setup a water bottle. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right. So it's going off. Yeah, there it is. So this is a guide, basically it's a guide on how to do it, how to make offerings, and specifically mostly talks about water bowl offerings and altar setup, right? So it doesn't talk about the 7-limb practice and 6 preliminary practice. It's kind of with the assumption that you know the context, right? So, but it's good to know the context when you are looking at this guide. So first of all, one of the most important things is, will it appear here? Yes, it should appear there, Mary Jo. If you should see it because you were already there. Do you see it, Mary Jo? Okay, well, if she still has
No.
trouble.
No, I do not see it.
In the chat
Uh,
box, or have you opened the chat box? On the
I,
bottom?
I thought I did, but maybe I
Yeah, no, you
didn't.
must have, but otherwise you wouldn't have been able to send the message. So, all right.
Yeah.
So let me, well, I can send it again. It's okay. It's right here, fortunately. There we go. All right. Try now. Well, try soon. Okay, try now, Mary Jo. You should see it right after your message.
I am not seeing it, but sometimes I'm very bad on technology. I wonder if anybody else can see it.
Yeah, Shayla can see it. So, okay, then Mary Jo, if you still don't see it by the time that we end this session, send me a message. And you can send it, well, what's the easiest way? My name is hard to spell. Yeah, okay, I'll type it in. So send me a message here.
In the chat box?
Yeah, so you should see that I just typed in my email address in the chat box. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so you can send me an email there and I will then reply with the document. Yeah?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. So so the thing to one of the important things to remember when we make offerings is that we're not just making offering, and this is a mental meditation actually. And when we're making offerings, we are not just offering physically what is in front of in our hands or on the altar, right? So Rinpoche has, you can look up on the FPMT website. He has guidance on how to make offerings as extensive as possible, right? So when we're making the physical offering, it's just a representation of a vast offerings that is truly what we want to make to the guru and to the Buddhas and so forth and so on, and the deities and all the wheel turning kings and so forth and so on, right? So we're not, so when we're making, the food offering, when we're making you remember the 8 offering substances, right? So, when we're, giving them water or giving them food or incense or light or, music and so forth and so on, it's vast, right? So, we imagine that, when we're offering them, incense or music or whatever, then we're offering all the beautiful music in the world, right? And especially music that we find beautiful, right? Because that's what's, because giving what we hold dear is the best way to give, right? So whatever food, so when we're making offerings of food, we could think about just like a sky, the sky. That's what I do. That's what Rinpoche had told his students, and that's what I do. I just imagine like sky full, just like in all directions of just bowls, full of like colorful and beautifully arranged foods, and whatever foods you really like, especially the desserts, ice cream, and and sushi, for example, I like sushi. So so, everything, right? And flowers, and and you can imagine, for example, and the Buddhas aren't just like, like pictures on, as I mentioned, right? Pictures on the altar, right? They're in their Pure Land, right? And in their Pure Land, they're, so for example, they say that in the Pure Land, the the babbling brook, that that goes through the fields or whatever, are sounds of the Dharma, right? And all the birds sing beautiful songs, right? Again, of Dharma. I mean, all the flowers, it's, so you imagine like you're making this offering in this place of just transcendent beauty, right? Because that's the realm of the Buddhas, and of course our gurus, who are representative of the Buddhas, right? So it's important to have that kind of mental attitude of vastness, because then we're certainly creating vast amounts of merit, which which ultimately is for benefiting others, not just benefiting ourselves. But it also creates a very spacious mind, and it really has, it's kind of like builds on itself when inspiration wise. So anyway, so it's important to kind of remember that when we're making offerings, to always just not just whatever we're holding, but same thing when we're offering like food, for example. If we're making a food offering prayer before we start to eat, or before we drink the coffee or whatever in the morning, then we are offering it to all the Buddhas in all the directions, and it's not just that food, but all the food in the entire world to the Buddhas. And to like, for example, like, when you offer food, it said that, you offering a food or making an offering to a pore, of the guru's body, right, is more beneficial than, I don't know, the sand number of grains of sand in the river Ganges. That seems to be the classic, the analogy they seem to use. And what does poor mean there, right? Poor means like, of course, it's not the physical, well, maybe it is the physical poor of his body, but I'm not sure how, but what it really means is everything that, at least this is how Rinpoche explained it, everything that the guru holds dear, right? So in Rinpoche's case, for example, when I think about offering, pores, offerings to each pore of the body of my guru, I think about his students. All his students are pores of his body, So I offer to all the students, in the FPMT, for example, right? Offer it to all the, because all the beings are important to him, right? So it's really like, you offer it to every single being in the universe, because they're all dear to Rinpoche. We offer it to all the animals, because Rinpoche has so many animals he rescues, right? He's got all these animal sanctuaries, like in Australia and Nepal and one other place. I don't know exactly where it is. So, all the animals, and so like that, it's really, yeah. So I think it's important to have the vastness, and also we're making offerings to the guru, right? Because that's how, we create the most merit, the most, developing our own potential, right? So, so he says, for example, when making offerings, you can offer to the merit field not only those offerings you've made at the altar, but those mentally transformed. But you can also offer all the beautiful flowers, the lakes, the parks, the sun, the moon, all the beautiful things which are your own karmic appearance, the various sense objects you see in your view. So for example, our wealth, right? Our whatever we hold dear. So all our virtue, right? Everything, our body. Well, that's something we hold dear. Our body, right? So, our spouse, our children, everything, right? Everything we hold dear, you offer to the Guru, right? And he says, when you offer light, you need not necessarily think of only the 1 or 2 butter lamps you have lit, but however many lights you have on in the room. And then in other places, he talks about how, Rinpoche himself, when if you go to his retreats or whatever, when he's offering lights, for example, he says out loud, he's offering all the lights in the meditation hall. He's offering all the lights in the local center. He's offering all the lights in all the centers in North America, all the other centers in all over the world, all the, everything. He offers all the lights in all the universe, in the whole universe. And the other funny thing, he has mentioned this in the past, is that when he travels, and he stays in hotels, he turns on every single lamp, every single light in the room so he can offer it. He's like, well, I don't know about nowadays with LED lights, but he says, well, it also, if it's cold, it also makes the room warmer. So yeah, so like that, and so he says, make offerings to every single holy object. So that means statues, stupas, all the, all the things that are holy, and of course, and gurus and so forth and so on. And every living bodhisattva and Buddha in the 10 directions. That also includes the many holy objects such as pictures and statues found in a practitioner's room. First, making one offering to one Buddha has unbelievable merit. And secondly, the internal phenomenon of karma is much more expandable in comparison to external things. So, what he's talking about is that making one offering of a tiny little, if you just, the beggar that has the 1 penny, right? And he makes the offering to the Buddha of that 1 penny with the heartfelt attitude is, it's a small offering, but over, it's because of the field of merit and so forth and so on, it expands continuously over the many lifetimes, right? That's the karma, karma expands. It's one of the points, right? And so, after some number of lifetime, it just becomes vast, right? So it creates a cause for, human life, or, or meeting the good teachers and so forth and so on, right? And there's a famous, example of, I don't know if you might know this already, so stop me if you know it. But there's an example of, the Buddha, after, he had gone through all his tribulations, and he wasn't, he didn't, he went to all the various sages and ashrams and learned all his meditation skills, right? But he realized that they still didn't reach the, they weren't full enlightenment, right? Got close, but not quite. And so, he sat down under the tree, right? And he decided that he was not going to get up until, he has overcome all his delusions, right? And then overnight Mara, was throwing all these arrows, and, the story, right? So, and basically, but by then he was like a skeleton, right? Like he was like, skin and bones, literally, because he hadn't eaten in many days and so forth and so on. So, there was a young farmer girl who was carrying milk, down, and past him and offer this tiny little bowl of milk to the Buddha, right? And that one gesture was the cause for her to, oh goodness, her to be born in the Tushita realm, I believe, so so that and get the teachings directly from the Buddhas, right? So that's so it grows over, and that's what Rinpoche is talking about here, is that a small, like a small seed grows into this big ginormous tree. And then the other thing also is that he talks about, when you think about offerings, if you have a tantric practice, so there's an extra dimension to it, in tantra. So, so there you yourself are the deity, right? Remember, in tantra, you are the resultant. You take on the resultant path, right? So you basically visualize yourself as the deity and act as if, right? So the light or whatever you're offering is purified by emptiness. It's not just a physical light that you're offering, right? It's a pure offering. And so similarly with similarly with incense and so forth and so on, and so all these pure offerings are bliss and bliss and voidness, bliss and emptiness, right? So those are that's a different kind of dimension to making offerings, and I'm not going to go that much into it because that's a different topic. Yes, Mary Jo.
I don't know where I got this idea. Maybe it's totally far out, but I always like to think also of those people who don't have anything, like like people that are immigrating and so forth, that may not have anything, that maybe it's good to offer what I most love in the morning, my cup of tea, my breakfast, or whatever, to them. So, but I don't know. Do you think that's good?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely, because remember, that's what we're talking about, is when you make offering to the guru, you can make offerings to, remember that's what it says in the scriptures, the offering to a pore of the body of the guru or the Buddha, is greater than, the atoms of the universe and so forth and so on, right? And as I mentioned, to the Buddha, and by implication the guru, all the beings are extremely dear, right? And so it pleases the guru, it pleases the Buddhas if we are, making offerings to them. Absolutely, right? So there's, and especially since, if you think about it, all of them are resultant Buddhas at some point, right? So you're not just making offerings to the, to a body, a physical body necessarily, but to the ultimate Buddha that is that body, right? That will be in that body, or whatever, you know what I mean, right? The Dharmakaya, right? So absolutely. It was something that occurred to me. Right. Oh, yes. So one of the qualities it talks about in the texts about the Buddhas is that to a Buddha, every being is beautiful. And when they say beautiful, they don't mean physically beautiful, But what they mean is that regardless of how repulsive or how much we think someone is evil or so forth and so on, the Buddha doesn't see that. The Buddha sees the inner potential, right? And that's the beauty that they see. And so that's why the Buddha, like they say the Buddha considers every other being as dear as if he were, as if the person were his own child, right? He doesn't differentiate, or he or she does not differentiate between his or her child and the next door neighbor, right? So yes, absolutely, we can make offerings to all the immigrants, all the people who are suffering everywhere in the world, not just people, animals and so forth and so on. So yeah, no, that's wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, and so one of the things I didn't mention last time is that when you make, okay, so Rinpoche says, hang on, so he says, right, so when you make the offering, the water bowl offering, right, as you're, filling the bowl and so forth and so on, you can recite Oma Hung as you offer it, because that blesses the water and purifies it, right? So we can kind of, we're not, it becomes, a pure substance. That's kind of the goal, not goal, but the point of this, right? So he says, when you light an incense or a butter lamp, just before you offer, you recite Oma Hongi, and then you offer it. He said there are various interferers, like spirits and so forth and so on, who take the essence. Okay, I didn't know that. So that is sort of for their enjoyment. So if one offers without blessing, one does receive the merit, but there is some interference in regard to the offering. Interesting. It affects the mind, making it kind of unclear or unstable. So in order for these things to not happen, one recites the mantra Oma Hung and blesses the offerings. Okay. So that's one thing. And also it's important when we make offerings to try to keep, obviously, of course, we talked about this, the offering substance, like the water itself, we try to find the purest water and so forth and so on. But also when we're making the offering, it's important that, we try to take the most care and not, breathe on it or sometimes I found myself sneezing and I forget that I'm, you don't want to sneeze on the offering and so forth and so on, right? Those kinds of things. I mean, that's obvious, but we forget. And what was I going to say? And you'll notice that actually, like when high lamas and stuff, when their attendants come, have you noticed, like attendants come to give them water, they have a kata, like not kata, they have a handkerchief or something like on their mouth, to cover the mouth, and that's so that they don't breathe on the water or whatever they're giving to the teacher, right? So yeah, so that's another way to like do that if you really want to follow the guidance, then to just cover your mouth as you're making the offerings, right? Of course, that makes it hard to kind of, do the, but you'll have to figure it out, do the, pouring the water from one water bowl into another. But yeah. Yes, Mary Jo.
Somebody told me once to wear a mask. That was before COVID. That was Annie Law, I think.
Yeah.
And that makes it easy, really.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask, Omahum. Is that Hum, that last one, the
Yes.
last word? Yeah.
Well,
I thought so.
sometimes they'll pronounce it Omahung, Hung. It's the same. It just depends on which dialect, you know, what some teachers will say Omahung, some teachers will say Omahum. You know, I'm from
Okay.
India, so, you know, I used to study Sanskrit when I was in school, so I say Omahum because that's how I learned Sanskrit. In
Yes.
Sanskrit, you would say Omahum. So yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, sure. Okay. And then one thing you might notice, if you, again, it depends on how elaborate you want to make it and so forth and so on. But let me share my screen. There is a mantra that is traditionally used to bless the offerings, and this is called the offering cloud mantra. So you've probably seen this, Om Namo Bhagavate Vajrasara Paramadani, this mantra. And this actually not only blesses, but multiplies the offering, multiplies the offerings hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of, you know, so if you're offering 7 water bowls, it becomes like 7 trillion, quadrillion, whatever, you know, offerings that you make, right? And of course, you know, you don't just rattle it off, but you have the mental attitude that you are, you know, the vast offerings and so forth and so on. But so I'm just putting, this is in that booklet that I sent, so you'll have it. But I'm putting this up there because you will see this in many texts. It's a very standard mantra you'll see in many places, you know. So that's what this mantra is about. And, you know, once you memorize it, it takes, you know, 10 seconds, you know. So it doesn't take much time, but it's a wonderful thing to do to multiply, you know, it automatically multiplies all the offerings, right? So it's a very easy way to do that. So, so yeah, so let me stop sharing now. Yeah. So when you're blessing and purifying the offerings, you know, even though you're offering what looks like water in, you know, our karmic it's a karmic creation, let me put it that way, right? The water that we are offering is because due to our karma and karmic creation, right? Our collective karma creation. But when you purify and blessing it, it's not just water anymore. It's actually like nectar, right? So what you're offering to the guru, to the Buddhas, and so forth and so on is something absolutely pure and delicious and nectar that, you know, the most beautiful thing that, you know, that could ever possibly be, and transcend, and it's a transcendental kind of object, right? So you know, so and you know, it's kind of like, and the nectar can be, you know, like also like in Tantra, for example, you think of it as the conjoining of bliss and voidness, you know. So there's that kind of element to it. So when you're offering, you think I'm offering them this nectar, which appears, and because of their pure minds, they see it as such, right? Because our guru and the Buddhas have pure minds and they go from joy to joy and they don't have attachment and aversion. Even the most repulsive thing that we can think of to them does not appear as such, right? Just like they say that, you know, the delicious water, you know, that we drink here in our realm, in the human realm, appears as, you know, like as, you know, as blood and pus to in the hell realms and the hungry ghost realms, right? So it's really our karma, how we see the same thing, right? So to a Buddha who doesn't have attachment aversion and is not affected by ignorance and delusion and obscurations, it's nectar. Okay. So that's mainly what I wanted to talk about. And so mainly to really have that attitude, the mental attitude of vastness, of offerings. Oh, damn it. Offerings, and to offering the offerings we're making, and the who we're making offerings to, both that quality of vastness to both of those things, because that's what creates that mental attitude of devotion, inspiration, and so forth and so on, right? Any questions? None of this is rocket science, right? As you know, it's really just about us remembering how to do it, and to realize, if we do it, how easy it is. It sounds complicated, but it really is easy once we have done it a couple of times. I think for me at least, it's the first initial step that's always hard. And once you've made yourself do it a couple of times, it becomes very easy. And then it's really, it can be very, and then you come up with your own inspiration. You just start with what Rinpoche says, and then as we get more into it, we inspire ourselves. So it really is a beautiful thing to make offerings. Anyway, I didn't have anything else to say. Did any of you think there's anything that I missed that you would, that you thought you would want to, have talked about, or anything like that regarding offerings? Are there any questions about, in your practice of offerings, if you like how to do something, or whether or not to do something, or something like that? Oh, yes, Mary Jo.
Yes, you mentioned, that we can kind of follow our own inspiration as well. And I guess it's a little, this particular Buddhist path has a lot of systematic ways that have been developed through the years that are thought to be very good, and like the way the water bowls are set up and so forth. And it's a little hard for me to know, am I being disrespectful if I don't follow that, exactly? Like, for instance, I have one water bowl, and it's just kind of all I can handle, I think. And is that disrespectful, I wonder?
No. Remember, the most important thing, and this one of the central tenets of Buddhism, is the motivation behind our action, right? So if our motivation is pure, whether or not it's just one water bowl or 7 water bowls, physical water bowls, it's really immaterial. It's about our own mental transformation. That's really what it's about, right? We're making these offerings for our own mental transformation. And we're making the offerings, I don't know if you were there at the meditation or not, and I mentioned this, is we're making these offerings not only to the Buddhas and the 10 directions, to our gurus and so forth and so on, but we're making it also to the resultant Buddha that we will be, right? So you will hear Rinpoche sometimes talking about the ultimate guru, which is of course the Dharmakaya and so forth and so on, but it's also the ultimate guru is we ourselves. Once we have been on the path long enough, we become our own guru, you know? And one of the things I remember one teacher said, and and he said that sometimes students are, they are coming to him with question. I won't mention who it was, but coming to him with questions. It's almost like the students are needy. They need to. They're like the teacher is the father, right? And he said, I know that a student has developed, is mature, and is on the path when I can relate to him as my equal. He doesn't need me to tell him what to do. He follows his own inspiration. He follows his own guidance because he knows enough. He doesn't need the teacher's advice, And so that's kind of, so that's the inspiration that I'm talking about. I'm not saying I have it. I don't. Okay. But I do know that as one does these things, an internal guide develops. I don't know what the word is, it's almost like feels like a conscience, but it's not. You just know what is appropriate, what is right, but so anyway, I digress. The point though is that it's not the amount of water bowls you're making and are you making it the most perfect way possible? It's really about the devotion behind it, the purity behind it, the purity of mind that is behind it, the motivation behind it, and so forth and so on. If we have those, then we've got the base, all the bases are covered. I mean, I don't think you need to worry about disrespectfulness and so forth and so on. As an example, I can't remember. It's in the Lamrim text. There was a monk. He had only one robe and one bowl to eat from, and that's all he had. His entire possessions, worldly possessions, and so he didn't have 7 water bowls to offer, right? So he would basically eat his food out of his bowl. And then it was time to make offerings. He would just clean out the bowl and then arrange it on his altar. He didn't even have statues, right? He just put it on I don't know where he put it, but on a table, I expect, or something like that. And he just made his offering, right? And then when it was done, when it was time to remove the offering, he basically said, that he had the attitude of borrowing it from the Buddhas for his food, right? And then he would offer it again, right? So that's, so we do the best, we do the best we can. That's all that's expected of us. So, and also, I think it's important not to get hung up on the tradition, on the tradition aspect of the water bowls and and so forth and so on. So you can make water bowls is the official line. Okay, since now I'm getting in trouble because it's probably being recorded. It is being recorded, but the official line is you make water bowl offerings and so on. And of course there's a lot of guidance with that, so it's easy to do it, and that's traditionally what has been done in Buddhism. But if there's some other practice that really inspires you, that is also offering, right? Maybe you grew up in the Catholic tradition or whatever tradition, and there was some ritual that was really, really inspiring or really evoked, a devotional attitude, devotional mind. You can do that, right? You can do that instead or as part of the water bowl offering. And I'm saying that not because I'm just making that up, but just because one of my teachers told me in that, like in that similar, something related to that, where he holds his Catholic tradition, he kind of melds it, in some certain cases. So yeah. So anyway, so you do what you think is most transformational. And that's that. And the Buddhas will be happy. They will be delighted with that, because that's what they want, right? That's what they want from us, just for our mental transformation. Anything else before we end? Yes, Lewis.
You just brought up something that I've always wondered. Before I got introduced to Buddhism, I've always had great admiration for Kuan Yin. Is it possible to incorporate her into my practice?
Sure. Kuan Yin is, by the way, Kuan Yin is from the Buddhist,
Right.
right. So, yeah. So there is no not contradiction, but there's no incompatibility. Sure, absolutely. You can, like as an example, like I was talking to my teacher who was, grew up in the Catholic tradition. His first priest, he considers him as one of his gurus. Right. I don't know if he has a picture on the altar, but he does think of him as his guru, right? Because he was the one who got him started on this path. Even though it was in the Catholic path, he veered away from it in his teens and late whatever in 20s, but it set the groundwork, right? So yeah, absolutely. You can, again, that's a whole inspiration thing, right? It's what's the motivation? I don't, there's no, I mean, I think that's one of the things I really like about Buddhism is that there is, they really try not to have this one way that must be followed, and you can change it around however you like. So yeah. Okay. So shall we end there then for today? Okay. So let's do our actually, since it is the last one session, let's do the formal prayers instead of just me doing the short. Hang on for a moment, if you don't mind being just slightly patience here. Prayers, all two prayers. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me share my screen. Share screen. Okay. Oh, way to go. Oh, it's a P. Oh, I guess I brought up the. Hang on, wrong one. PDF I need. PDF. Okay. All right. Now you should be able to see it. Okay. Oh. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparable kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please, please live long. Finally, Geshe-la, beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the graduated path. You are the unequaled guide. Please live a long and stable life. Geshe-la is leaving for Nepal soon. You know that, right? So end of this month. So yeah, so wish him well if you get a chance. And also, I don't know if you, I don't know if it's been announced or not, but TNL has found Geshe-la a house. So, which is really wonderful because he no longer has to shuttle between places, and he has his stuff in all these different people's houses, and he can't keep track of when he leaves one house to another what is his and what is not. He was really happy to see the place. So yeah, okay, hopefully he will be with us even longer now.